because I don't really read too well. But I either read and it sounds good and I don't comprehend, or I read to comprehend and it doesn't sound well. So I'm not really a reader in that sense. Are you guys familiar with the cone of learning?
Mm-mm.
The cone of learning was basically a study by Edgar Dale in 1969. And this is kind of like, I guess, what I build my classroom instruction on. And what I find is that most people don't even know how to learn, or they don't realize what they're doing when they're learning. And so you have basically two different types. You have active learning and you have passive learning. Passive learning is typically what we call, it's a very technical term, it's called it sucks, right? If, in other words, if I'm reading to you, you're only going to remember 10% of what you read after about 2 weeks. That's why the 2-week period is critical in taking these certifications. So if you were to just read this whole book, you remember about 10% of it, or about 1,000 slides, you remember about 100 of them. Not really too effective, if you ask me. If you were to just listen to me all week long, you would be very, very bored, and you'd only remember 20% of it. You'd remember 30% after 2 weeks if you just watch what I do all week. And if you start combining that, you get up towards the 50%, but still not enough to pass. I try to focus on active learning, which is you remember 70% of what you say. So that means realistically, you guys need to speak all of this back to me, which is participate in the discussion. The way that I run the discussions, or I talk about real world experience, talk about what I've done, what you've done, and then I plug in the material so you can relate it to something you know. It's a lot easier to learn, relate something to something that you know, as opposed to trying to basically learn it from scratch. So I don't expect you to give a talk, but you can participate in the discussion on it just fine. Or my favorite, 90% of what you guys do, and this would be simulating a real thing, that would be your real world experience, and participating. So the closer we can get to that, the more effective this class ultimately becomes. What cracks me up about this is, people have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, and they've never heard about this. And I've always scratched my head at that. And it's like, how can you have a PhD? You basically went through the whole education system and you never once, looked at, what's the best way to learn. Some people can read a book and, they can ace stuff. Other people actually need to do it. So I'm a big believer of monkey see, monkey do, basically. So you'll pick up on my style here because I guess my motivation to teach these classes is I went to Johns Hopkins University and engineering night school, and I had some of the same instructors my dad had, and he went there 20 years before I did. And they were horrible. All they did was basically read out of the book. And I just thought to myself, man, how can this person still have a job? I mean, it was beyond what we would refer to as tenure. And I'm sure there's other great instructors at Johns Hopkins. I just, some of the ones kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I never wanted anybody to say, Leo, I can't believe that guy's still in business, have those same thoughts that I had. So when it comes down to this, it should be a very, very effective class. All right. Basically, we're going to